All right, welcome. Today I'm here with Londi Mkhize, and I am so excited for this conversation. So, Londi, welcome, and we'll go ahead and get started. So, Londi is from South Africa, and she is a thought leader on the transformation and mastery of relationships. She helps high achievers meet their human need for love and connection while staying true to themselves. And today we are here to chat about how to create and keep soul connection in your intimate relationships while still honoring your true self. I am so excited for this conversation. And Londi, thanks for being here. It's evening your time and morning my time, so I'm gonna be with my coffee here. But welcome. Let us know a bit more about you, like how you got to where you're at now with what you're working with people, and a bit of your journey, if you don't mind.
Thank you for having me, and hello. Hello to everyone. Thank you so much. I'm excited to be here. Thank you, Nicole. So yes, in the Facebook and social media world, I go as Coach Londi, and I am a relationship coach. I help with the mastery and transformation of relationships, and I work specifically with high achievers. And the reason for that is, as a person who very early in life, and I just grew up and I was taught to achieve as much as I can in order to be deemed and validate my success. And my success and achievement was supposed to make me the happiest person on earth. And so I ticked all the boxes very early in my life. Good career, get the car, get the husband, have the kids, done all of those things. And I had a quarter life crisis. I even still remember calling my friend, and she thought I was crazy. And to a lot of people, I was crazy and I was ungrateful because they did not understand why I would feel unsatisfied with my life. And so that's what happened with me. And in relationship, I got into relationship coaching because when I took a step back and I decided to leave my work because it felt so unfulfilling, and all the stuff I was accumulating also wasn't fulfilling me. So I stepped back and I decided to take some time out to figure out what would make me happy. And in that time, I realized why I was driven to be an overachiever. And the reason why I wanted so badly to be successful was because I wanted to earn my father's love, acknowledgement, and acceptance. So I grew up never knowing my father. And so I did everything in my life. The only thing that I knew about him was when he found out my mother and he had made a baby, he decided he wasn't ready for fatherhood because he wanted to be successful first. And so I thought by earning success, I would be able to earn his love, acceptance, and acknowledgement at the very least. And that didn't happen. When I eventually met him for the first time when I was 27 years old, he flat out rejected me. And I just gave up on life, and I thought, you know what, let me just start from scratch and see what I can do building my life where I am no longer dictated to by my circumstances on what I choose to do with my life and what I choose to accumulate in my life. And one of the things I saw was that the void of wanting my father's love had also spread out into different areas of my life. I had a beautiful family, two lovely kids, a husband, but I also couldn't connect and feel and allow myself to connect with them at a deep level and appreciate the love that they were showing and sharing with me. So I decided to start out in studying human behavior and relationships. Mainly, number one, the selfish reason was I was trying to understand how my father could go on with his life as if I don't exist when he knows very well that I do exist. And then number two, I thought if I could help people understand the dynamics of relationship, maybe they wouldn't feel obligated to cut themselves out of people's lives if the relationship doesn't work. So we can still be able to share the love in the different ways that we are able to share love without having to be in close proximity with each other. And so one day I was just listening to, I think it was a TD Jakes sermon, and he said, so I was looking now for ways to create an income. And he said, if you want to start a business, choose something that comes naturally to you, that you are good at, and monetize that. And when I looked at my life, my love life was basically the only thing that had been going right all my entire life. That was the one thing that was stable, the one thing that was effortless, the one place that I was winning. And I felt like I wasn't doing anything at it. It was just going right. And so I sat down and thought, okay, maybe I can teach people that. How do you get to that point? How do I do it? So that's how I got into coaching intimate relationships and romantic relationships, because that family dynamics void for me, added with the fact that my love life was just the one thing that always went right in my life. I've been with my husband since varsity.
Wow, that's so powerful, Londi. And there's so much of your story that that I resonate with, in the sense of I also did not grow up with my real father, and I didn't meet him until I was 33, and that was a huge void for me growing up. And that piece of understanding, your worth outside of success, and trying to create certain things in your life to fill that void. And I think that's a lot of where, in the personal development world specifically, it's like, I know one of my teachers, Dr. DeMartini, is like, wherever you have a huge void in your childhood usually leads to your purpose later. And there's a part of me that just wants to be like, but that's not fair. That's the thing. But in a lot of ways, it really is part of our life purpose or life path when something happens and we try and understand it. And it's kind of this seed wound, or like a soul wound, that we come in with to work out and experience in our lifetime. So thank you for sharing that, because I think a lot of people will really resonate, whether it was their mom or their dad or a person in their life or relationship later, where seeking that approval really drives them to do certain things that either might not be in alignment with them, which they find out later, or leads them to a deeper purpose. So that's really powerful. Thank you for sharing that. And with that being said, I know from your story, we just heard some of it too, but what do you feel like the importance of authenticity in a relationship is, as far as getting to bring your true self to the table and getting to maintain that while in the connection with others? And you spoke to this too, around even if maybe you don't get along with that person or you're separated from them, how to maintain that connection and authenticity in relationship.
Authenticity is like oxygen to a relationship, because it determines your experience of relationship, and it also determines the other people's experience of you. And it also speaks to the sustainability of a relationship, which is what a lot of people struggle with, because making soul connections or making any form of connections, that happens naturally because of the nature of who we are. However, sustaining the connection and being fulfilled in the connection is where the authenticity piece comes in. Because without the authenticity, then we fall into the trap of having to role play. We fall into the trap of always being in pursuit or even avoidance, depending on whatever archetypes are running us at the moment in that experience. And it also is the doorway that determines how much we are open to the love that is available to us, and also our recognition of the love that is available to us, because it's that piece of who we are, and it's that piece of our connectedness to ourselves that allows us to have that fulfillment in relationship. So without the authenticity, that's when the relationships become unsustainable, they become toxic, they become all of these things that we then say make relationship unbearable or difficult or create challenges for us, at the end of the day, it's just all boils down to authenticity. And something that I often say is, a lot of people don't have relationship problems. A lot of people have authenticity problems. They just are not connected to who they are, and therefore they cannot truly express who they are. And whatever it is that they do end up eventually expresses, they cannot sustain it because it's not authentic to who they are.
Oof, that's so powerful. Your authenticity is oxygen to you. Oh, so good. And so whether or not someone is single or in a relationship, something I've noticed, and let me know how it is in South Africa too, but something I've noticed in the West is for women specifically, I think men do it too, but I notice it more for women, that there is this piece about compromising in order to maintain a relationship. But what I've noticed is that compromising comes at the expense of someone hiding their authenticity and feeling like they have to compromise, aka like not want, not need, or not express their side in order to maintain a relationship. But what I see is it often doesn't equate to them having a super healthy relationship. It's just, I'm just not going to say anything because I don't want to fight with this person. And then that builds up over time. What has been your experience with seeing that with your clients and your part of the world and all of that, or what you think about that?
It happens a lot, and it's mainly because of our misunderstanding of what compatibility is and what our role is in creating, nurturing, and experiencing compatibility in our relationships. And especially having worked with people who are achievement driven, accomplishment driven, who also have the struggle of separating identity from accomplishment, who also identify themselves using labels and acquisitions. The struggle for compatibility is very real, mainly because, number one, like I said, it's the misunderstanding of what compatibility is, because it's getting to that place where we are in mutual, not even agreement, but it's the mutual acceptance of, I am accepting, and it's compatibility, something that we need to expand into and not contract ourselves into. So it's that fear of expanding into being compatible with the Nicole. So out of fear, I think that if I expand, maintaining my true authenticity, maintaining all that I am, and just expand out to, so I can also encompass and embody pieces of Nicole that I like, pieces that I accept, pieces that in alignment with me and my values, allowing myself to expand into that creates compatibility, that nurtures compatibility. However, because out of the fear and out of also the conditioning, because we were taught to go into relationships because we're looking to be completed. So there's something missing with me. There's something wrong with me. There's something I don't have that I'm meant to get from a relationship, from my encounter with Nicole. So because I'm already approaching the relationship out of the fear and out of lack and scarcity, I already assume that there isn't enough room. There isn't enough room for me to be whole and complete in who I am, and to also have enough room to allow Nicole to come into here and express herself holistically and completely. And it's that misconception. And I just think it's an injustice as well that we have to go through and experience. And so we contract ourselves instead of allowing ourselves to expand into compatibility. Out of fear, we contract to say, okay, in order for me to make room for Nicole, I need to cut back a bit. I need to dim myself a bit so that Nicole can find room. So it also has to do with the scarcity and the lack and the fear that a lot of us grew up being fed, if I can use that word.
Wow. Yeah, that's so true and so powerful. And that's where this piece around, I don't know if it's like necessarily societal dynamics or family dynamics where, and I see this a lot in the coaching industry where there's hierarchy around like this person's a leader. And so they're up here and they're on this pedestal. So I don't know as much as them and I need to look up to them. And there's those dynamics that happen where you're either putting someone on a pedestal or in a pit, and you're trying to find where you fit in that. And what I hear you saying is that that's all wrong. And it's actually that you get to show up and hold your own space, and other people get to do that as well. And I love what you just said. And I'd love to hear more too, where in communication, how what you teach helps people actually create more connection, in the sense where I get to show up and take up space, and so does this person. And how, like, maybe different dynamics that you use or have seen work really well for people around communicating that in a way where both people get to be in their sovereign space and get to communicate and meet each other in that, versus this like hierarchy thing that happens.
So as achievement based, achievement driven, and people, and one of the things I really do honor in my practice is, how do I get to experience the relationship without losing the pieces of me that make me who I am? Because it's my value of achievement, it's my value of being goals driven, it's my value of wanting to succeed in life that drive me, that make me who I am. How do I maintain that while allowing myself to be in the space of whoever it is that I want to share my connection with? And so in communication, one of the techniques that I very simple, that I often ask people to do, is to simply imagine if in that moment of communication, whether it's verbal, non-verbal, number one, just understanding the fact that communication, the verbal part of communication, is like the smallest piece of the puzzle. So yeah. So now in your communication, imagine if you didn't have to hide anything, if you didn't have to prove anything, if you didn't have to protect yourself from anything, if you just were to communicate from a place of not trying to protect yourself, not trying to hide anything, not trying to prove anything, how would you communicate? If you didn't have anything to hide, if you didn't have anything to prove, how would you communicate? What would you say? What do you do? Because our communications also come in our actions. How would you feel? Because the very first form of communication that we received before we even born into the earth is emotional. It's the emotional communication from conception. Either our parents are excited, so the first thing we know is excitement, or the guilt that our parents carry as they're carrying us, or the shame. So our very first form of communication is emotion. And so it's important when you communicate to first establish your emotional state. What emotional state are you in? And in this emotional state, what are you trying to hide? What are you trying to prove? What is it that you are currently rooted in your emotional state? And once you understand what you are communicating emotionally, which is what's going to fuel your action, then you need to decide, in my emotional state, do I proceed or do I need to create transformation so that the message, because a lot of times in relationships, miscommunication is a result of how I feel and what I'm saying are not in alignment. And so it becomes a miscommunication. So if what I'm feeling and what I'm about to say are not in alignment, what needs to happen? How do I get myself into that alignment? Do I sleep on it? What do? Do I not communicate it now? Do I go search what's going on? Am I being triggered? So what is the source of your communication emotionally? And then work to aligning it with your actions and your words, because it's when the emotions and the actions and the words are in alignment, that's when we get the experience that we want. But when there's a misalignment in there, then we call that miscommunication, because obviously the person that's going to be receiving the communication, they can read us on all levels. And a lot of times we expect people to just read and to only receive our spoken word. But it's impossible. We receive and everything, the body language, the emotions, the thoughts. That's why we are able to say, oh, I see what you mean, because we can read the thought as well from the person's words or from their state. So it's understanding communication holistically. And in order to understand communication holistically, you can strictly just start by assessing right now what I'm feeling. Am I trying to hide something? Is there something I'm trying to prove? What is the purpose of my communication in this moment? Is it to express my alignment, or is it to hide my misalignment? Then we work from there.
Oof, that's so powerful. I'm just like soaking all of that in. And so when people are showing up from that space and they are in alignment, and I love what you said about this piece of us being human where we feel and see, and we're so sensory oriented, even if we don't think we are, where someone can say, yeah, I'm fine, and we instinctively know that they're not. And or people will say, yeah, I'm fine, just to kind of move through a thing, and they expect people to pry in and ask, oh, is that what you really mean? And there's all these different ways in which people have learned how to move through relationships with in that way. And I'm curious your thoughts and how, when you work with people, when someone is in alignment where they're speaking their truth, they're emotionally and in verbally, yet the person, their partner or at work or someone, it's still, let's say they disagree, like this person thinks and feels this way, this person thinks and feels this way. They're both speaking their truth, but it's not, let's say, compatible. Like we're kind of seeing this on a large scale with the pandemic and with, presidency voting and all of these different things. When people are both in their truth, but in disagreement, what is kind of your go-to or ways to maintain connection, to hold that space for both truths to be real?
So one of the things that we misuse our relationships for is we want our relationships to be a resource of validation, instead of allowing our relationships to serve us in what relationships can effortlessly do. And that is a resource for growth and evolution. And when we are in conflict with each other, relationships, before any other part or anything else they can serve us with, they serve us as mirrors. And it's the type of mirrors that doesn't show a pimple that I know is on my face. It's the type of mirror that shows what is there, including my blind spots, including stuff that I've been suppressing, including things that I have manifested spiritually, that need to facilitate my growth. So when we are in conflict, it's always a good time or a good opportunity to pause for a second and see the stuff that is coming up in the next person that you are being in conflict with. What could it possibly be reflecting back to you about some aspect of your life? And it doesn't even, and a lot of times it's not even about the relationship space, but it could be something reflected to you in how you deal, or your relationship with your finances, or your relationship with your health, or your relationship with your spiritual being. So our relationships act as mirrors that allow us to see what is there, not necessarily to see what we're looking for, but to see what exists within us on all the different levels of our being. So one of the gifts that conflict affords us is that gift to get that perception, or to view into, or to zoom into our blind spot, or to the stuff that we don't see or perceive with our force of habit. We don't see or perceive with out of what we are used to, but a lot of stuff, what we are manifesting spiritually, that we are unaware of on our physical day-to-day. So when conflict arises, it's always a good idea to just stop for a bit and see how am I showing up in this very same way? Because conflict oftentimes is a trigger, and a trigger is just a signal for attention. There's an area in my life that needs my attention. It's not necessarily between me and this person, but maybe in my finances, I'm showing up as whatever it is that you are perceiving this person to be. I remember I used to not like my pastor because I thought he was influencing people to be dependent on him. Instead of teaching people, and he wanted people to praise him and glorify him, and he wanted them to be solely dependent on him. And simple things like a prayer, something you can do for yourself, he's not teaching people that. And somebody asked me, so where are you acting exactly the same way in your life? Where are you saying my life is dependent on me seeing this person or having this thing in my life so that I can have a certain experience? And when I saw that, how where I had my own idol, what I had created as an idol for myself, or put this thing on a pedestal or created as a condition for some other outcome, I was able to see that. And it wasn't even in my relationships, it was in my finances, because I've had to do a lot of healing work around my money and my finances. And I recognized that I had money on a pedestal. It was this thing that had all the power in the world. It was my pastor, in the same way that I had seen how my pastor was doing to other people in the congregation who were weaker than him or who didn't have the powers. So I was doing the same thing. So when conflict arises, or when your truth and somebody else's truth doesn't match, it's often a time where you just need to pause a bit and see, do a quick inventory of your life holistically. Where are you showing up like that? Because relationship will always, before anything, afford us the opportunity to look into the mirror and see stuff that we could be manifesting in other ways other than mental.
Yeah, absolutely. And along the lines with that, when someone is, let's say they're doing the personal development, they're doing this work, and their partner maybe isn't, and whether or not they are for or against this person growing, what happens when someone is on this path? And because I've seen this too with narcissistic abusers or different things where they're the mirror work with that can sometimes lead people into really tricky places where they're almost making excuses for the abuse versus being like, this is actually not healthy for me, and this person's not willing to do the personal development work and that kind of thing. So what when you work with people, and if you have experienced this in working with people, would you recommend where when you're doing this mirror work, when it's like, ooh, seeing where you do certain things versus like, this is no longer a healthy situation for me to be in?
So in order for us to not lose ourselves in trying to fix ourselves and doing mirror work, it's always important to allow the mirror work to be a means to allowing our vision and our purpose to expand. So the mirror work is a means to our expansion. And a lot of times our mirror work is a call for a decision and choices to be made. So it's important to know what it is that you want. One of the things that people quickly discover when they enter into relationship coaching is the fact that they actually don't know what they want. And that's the number one cause of their problems, because they don't know what they want. So they are putting up with all of these things because they really don't know what they want. Because when you say, okay, then now you've done this, how has it gotten you closer to what you want? They don't, because they don't have that benchmark of, this is what I want. And so this is a possible vehicle to get me to what I want. So it's important and imperative for us to know, what is it that you want? Be very clear in what it is that you want, because for some people there comes a point where personal development doesn't work anymore. Why? Because you are now focusing on self-inflicted pain and suffering, and we neglect the self-mastery. So when personal development doesn't work anymore, I always suggest, now move up, level up to self-mastery. Because in self-mastery, that's where you step into your sovereignty. Because in personal development, we're looking at a lot of conditioning. We're looking at a lot of the what we are. And instead of looking at the who we are, the where we are, the why we are. So we need to look at ourselves holistically and get to that point of, and you can only look at yourself holistically when you understand, number one, that it facilitates your understanding as well of what purpose the relationship is serving. Because there will be relationships where you are just fetching your karmic wounds so that you can heal, and you can settle some stuff that is in your way. There are relationships, you know what, when they say you're going to kiss a lot of toads before you meet your prince, something like that. Yeah, there are relationships that are meant to be that preparation for us to meet our prince. So we're going to have those experiences so that we facilitate and we go through our healing. We literally need to go fetch the wound so that we can work through it, heal it. And then, because when we meet the prince, we don't want to be healing wounds with the prince. We want to be creating and building and co-creating stuff. We want to be allowing our vision to be popping in and us experiencing it. So there are relationships that will allow us to do that. And it is in our non-attachment to the experience that allows us to allow the relationship to do its bit. And also that knowing what you want, which is, I want my prince instead of a toad, that you're going to recognize that I'm with a toad and I have no business being here. And then you can walk out. So it's that awareness of what do you want.
That's so important. And I really feel this for like your work being so helpful for whether or not someone is in a relationship or single, because I feel like women who or men that are single and working with you around this type of stuff would benefit so much to getting so clear on your value and your standards and the type of relationship. And I think for a lot of people who experience a lot of childhood wounding around relationships, sometimes don't know what they want because they don't know what healthy looks like. They didn't have that mirrored or set up for them. And around that, with people getting so clear in what they want, how do you typically work with, whether you call it self-worth or confidence, in people maintaining and owning that part of them that knows what's true, and also getting to communicate that? Because I think that's a big piece for people. Even if they know what they want, there's a part that they're still like, oh, but I can't have that, or other people can have it but I can't, or they're not, as you said, like stepping up into that mastery piece.
So the fear of having it all. That's what a lot of people that I work with, at the end of the day, they fear having it all, because we do come from, our achievement is driven by what we lacked. We're trying to make up, we're trying to fill our voids. So it's that fear of having it all. And it comes, number one, with acknowledging what your fears are, acknowledging what your voids are, acknowledging what your perceptions are. So your perceived lack, your perceived scarcity, your perceived notion that you need to earn the love. So it always starts with, I always say, let's do a fact of the matter exercise. A fact of the matter is, I am driven to be successful because I want to prove myself to whoever and for these whatever reasons. So acknowledge it. Acknowledge it, the good, the bad, and the ugly. Acknowledging something is also very different from owning something. So when we acknowledge something, then we have a decision to make. Then we have a choice, because a lot of us also grew up thinking that we don't have a choice around a lot of things. And it was also because of what we were unaware of. So when we raise our awareness, when we raise our consciousness of the fact of the matter is, then we are able to expand into choice, into having free will. Because when we have these childhood wounds that we collected, a lot of them felt like we didn't have a choice. It was just what I call heavenly luck. It was just, hey, tough luck. This is what you were born into. This is what you have to deal with. The hand you were dealt with, we couldn't choose. So we start the healing process by giving ourselves the power of choice. So how do we do that? We start by acknowledging all the stuff, the good, the bad, the ugly, the what is, the what we wish it is, the what we've been taught it is. Let's acknowledge it all. And then let's create choices let's make decisions and then have choices around how do we then support our decisions around it. So it just starts with that. Let's have that acknowledgement conversation and awareness conversation, not an analysis conversation, because that's also where a lot of mess comes up, where instead of just having awareness on something, we tend to spiral down the rabbit hole because we got caught up in analysis. So no, let's not analyze anything. Let's just acknowledge it and be aware, because when we know, then we have a choice, which is one of the things that we felt robbed of as people who grew up and are trying to heal from all of these childhood wounds that are created by void.
Yeah, wow, it's so powerful. I feel like I'm just like, let that soak in for people, and so much power in everything that you're saying. And with this, in regards to creating lasting happiness and deep connection and relationship with others, yeah, this element of ownership and acknowledgement, and also where you're not just getting hooked in and taken out by that. So when you are working with couples and helping them to create lasting happiness and deep connection, what are some of your like top 3 nuggets or like things that you work on with couples to support them in creating that deep soul connection and lasting happiness?
So number one, the creation part of what we do. We're not making things out of thin air, because that's where a lot of people get caught up, and that's where we see things as being bigger than what they are, because we think we're going to need to manufacture happiness out of thin air. So it's number one, understanding that creation means increasing our consciousness of the happiness that exists for us. You are going to find it and identify it wherever it is, wherever it's the easiest for you to identify it, because it's there, it already exists. So you're going to go look for it and you're going to find it. You're not going to create it out of thin air and poof, it's going to be here. So number one is that work of find it, identify it, recognize it. So number one, where's the easiest place for you, the safest space for you to recognize happiness? And if it's outside your relationship, great, even better, because now that also invites this element of creating compatibility into your relationship. It also allows us to work with experiential intimacy as well, because we need to cultivate all these different levels of intimacy, and having different experiences and having different likes is one of the ways that we cultivate intimacy. So where do you find? First, number one, we recognize it in whatever, in the holistic experience or life experience, recognize where happiness lies for you. And then number two, how do you expand the happiness to now pour it into the relationship? Because it's easier to maintain the relationship when you come carrying it, as opposed to something that you think you're going to find in there. That creates the problem. So when you found it outside the relationship, we are celebrating for days, because now you are going to drag it from where it is, you're going to bring it into the relationship. And all you now need to do is maintain. So it already exists. We're not going to create it together. We are bringing it in. You bring yours, I bring mine. Now we have a double whammy of happiness. How do we keep it there? How do we expand it? So that's the two things. And then the third thing, in making it last. So it speaks now to the giving ourselves permission and getting each other off of the hook, because a lot of times we hook onto our partners and we want them to be everything to us all the time. So when you recognize your happiness and you recognize that you bring it into the relationship, now you give yourself and your partner permission to keep going out and fetching the happiness, so that you can keep pouring into the relationship, instead of trying to find all these different things and elements in relationship and transforming those things into happiness, and then robbing the relationship of all the other elements that it needs. So allowing the relationship to have different facets and different elements, and then pouring in what we can, as much as we can, from outside of the relationship, from within us. And outside the relationship is only our perception. It's all just based on perception. Nothing is really ever outside of anything, because it's all just who we are and we are just it. But perception, human experience says it's outside of us. So we work with that until we get to that elevated stage of, okay, now we've outgrown this personal development thing. We're working with self-mastery now. That's when we are able now to deal holistically with just how do you now self-express. It's all a game of self-expression. Now, when playing the game of self-expression, how do we do that? And it's always, what do I know? What do I want to know? What do I no longer want to know? What am I available for? What am I responsible for? What do I choose to no longer be available for? So it's now we are just playing the game of choice and decision and choice. And that's all it is. That's all self-expression is. You are aware of who you are. You're aware of where you are. So we move from wanting to be compatible, from wanting to be competent in relationship to being confident in relationship.
That's so powerful. And for people that are coming from this space, and what I heard really was, what are you bringing? What are you giving that feeds into this relationship between two people versus what can I get? What can I take? How can I fill myself from this? So really it changes that dynamic of what you're showing up with versus trying to get something. And when two people have really mastered this place of showing up to the relationship, they're both contributing. When is there a point? Because I've seen this with some, it's, what is it called in the States? It's the conscious uncoupling, where two people are in a relationship or parenting or whatever, but they both come to this place where it's like, this relationship is complete. Where in the work that you do in creating lasting relationships, how does that play out where people, it's like when you choose to continue maintaining or when you choose to consciously uncouple, where you're not blaming someone for it not working, it doesn't have to be like this big tragic thing that happens, but where is that balance of when a relationship has run its course? Like when you have a relationship that's the season, a reason, or a lifetime, there's like different friendships or partnerships or different, parents or different things that come into your life. What has been your experience with that? Or what would you like to share with people around being really attuned to owning that part around like, I really love this person, but it's just no longer like it's run its course or whatever, whether that's a friendship or a partnership or in, family relationships. What is your advice around that, or what your thoughts are on that?
So that all has to do with relationship purpose. Every relationship exists to serve a purpose, and every relationship's purpose is there to help us and to facilitate us in our growth and evolution. So that's all relationship will ever do for us. The love, the happiness, the everything else the romance, all of that stuff. I don't know much about that. I know about how relationships help us in our growth and evolution. So in the relationship serving its purpose in growth and evolution, it all boils down to, when you reflect on a relationship, you are able to see where you started and who you were in a relationship and who you are in a relationship when you are contemplating what's next. And every relationship goes through these phases. And when we contemplate what's next, ideally the relationship should either have moved us into a place where we are more in love with ourselves, where we are more compassionate with ourselves, where we are more comfortable and at home with who we are. Because ultimately, it's me that I pour into the relationship. I take me wherever I go. And it's in my experience of the other person where I reflect on, in my experiencing the other person that I've been in relationship with, how have I grown and developed as a person? And if a relationship has helped you to grow and develop, you will not have hard feelings when you walk out of it, because by law, you won't grow and develop by yourself. The next person would have done the same. And if they lack the awareness of it, that's not your problem. One day they're going to wake up to the fact that the relationship has served them in their growth and evolution. But when you recognize that it has served you and it can no longer serve you, you walk away with no hard feelings. So that's why we have soul connections that are purely for us to heal from our unresolved childhood issues. And every relationship will bring our unresolved issues to the surface. Every relationship will bring our spiritual manifestations to the surface. It's just the nature of relationships, the configuration of relationships. It's going to do that. And once you've gotten the healing or the increase in consciousness and the relationship has served its purpose and you are authentically in integrity with yourself, you will feel it and you will know. And you'll be able to know that, okay, this relationship has served me. It will now be an injustice and it will now be an act of self-betrayal if I stay any longer. Then you're able to walk away with no hard feelings. And those are the relationships that we call our karmic soul connections that come just to do that for us, to help us move and facilitate ourselves along that line, so that now we get into the space of having now these self-expressive relationships. Because if we were to come and express our wounded selves in our soulmate relationships, the relationship is no longer a soulmate relationship. So now it's in also understanding where we are in relationship and also the needs. So the word needs gets thrown a lot around when we speak in relationships. I must have my needs met. I must have my needs. Everybody wants to have their needs met in relationship. But what does it mean? There are different sets of needs. We have physical needs that need to be met. And when I'm at a place where I can meet my own physical needs, and my relationship was meeting solely my physical needs, that relationship is going to be hard to maintain because I no longer am going to be fulfilled by the fact that that person can meet my physical needs. That's what happens with parents. That's why when our children become teenagers, we lose our minds because now they kind of figured they don't need us for much. Ooh, that's what's happening in my house. They don't need us for much. Now they can do all these things all by themselves. They can even cook for themselves. So, hey, she doesn't need to talk to me that much anymore. She can only talk to me once a week if I'm lucky, but because she doesn't need me for that anymore. And then when you've met so you must know what needs your relationships you are wanting your relationship to meet. And if your relationship is meant to meet your spiritual needs and the person you're with is just not very spiritual, then that's going to be hard to maintain. So knowing your needs is also very important, and it's what's going to allow you to stay in integrity when you are making decisions around your relationship. And whatever decision you make, when you are fully aligned with who you are and when you are within your integrity, is a decision that's going to benefit both you and the person that you make in the relationship around.
Yeah, absolutely. And with that, I know a lot of people can be like, oh, this sounds like so much work for like the awareness and all of these things. And I usually argue with like the work that I do in emotional integration and intelligence, where I actually think it takes more work. It's more painful to not be aware and to not be in alignment. So everything you just said is so important for people to just be in that awareness around it actually takes more work to try and maintain relationships, whether it's with other people or certain patterns in your own life. It takes more energy, more pain, more like shoving down to try and maintain those relationships that are no longer working. Like if it's just the physical piece and they're not evolving with you, and this, whether it's in a relationship or personally as well. So that's so powerful. And Londi, let us know, where can people, what do you got going on right now? If any like courses or offers or one-to-one, and how can people find you and connect with you?
Oh, awesome. Thank you. So I just wanted to say one last thing that popped into mind when you were saying, oh, it sounds like a lot of work. So what I always usually joke around with, and it's something I read, I forgot the name of the book. It says, betrayal is betrayal. The only thing you do is make a choice of who you betray. So it's either you're going to betray yourself or you're going to betray somebody else. But at the end of the day, you are choosing who you love more. And that's what happens a lot of times in relationships. We feel that by choosing to love other people more and avoiding betraying them, it's easier to betray ourselves. So, and that's the most painful part of betrayal you can experience, where you choose to betray yourself. Yeah. So when you choose to stay in relationship, or when you choose to want to buy into this notion, because it's something that we were sold, that it's supposed to happen easy, it gets there. It does get to a place where it feels effortless, but the effortlessness of the relationship comes with you making the decision to say, I'm just going to focus on me. And whatever it is that I feel, whatever it is that I think, whatever it is that I do, if it's all in integrity and I'm expressing that, whatever sticks, sticks. Whatever doesn't stick, doesn't stick. And that's all I'm going to do. It becomes easy in that sense, so that you don't have to keep constantly making decisions around different people. All you need to do is make decisions to stay in integrity with yourself, and you will ultimately have those experiences that are aligned with keeping you in integrity. So it's just a matter of making the decision to say, I'm going to end self-betrayal. I'm going to end self-abandonment. I'm going to end all of these things that have me being busy with other people instead of being busy with myself. So that's something that just popped up.
Oh, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. That was amazing. That was like a mic drop. You just took us to church. So thank you.
You are welcome. I wanted to be a preacher sometime in my life. I did change my mind after I met my preacher. So
I love it. I love it.
But I am mostly just on Facebook and Instagram. And I do offer, because of the work that I do, and also the type of people that I choose to work with, I am that coach that chooses the type of people that I work with. So it's people that need to be willing. All I ask for is for willingness. You can piggy bank off of everything you need until you get to the readiness, but you will get to the readiness. So you don't need to feel ready today. You just need to be willing. So it's the willingness to do the work. It is work, because it's good. Fetching the wounds and recognizing, because ultimately that's the configuration of relationship that we cannot change. It's just one of the things that we need to accept, and getting the awareness and getting to that place of self-acceptance and self-acknowledgement. It does take time. So it's one thing that I'm not very shy to admit, that it takes time. It's going to take time. It's going to take deliberate attention and effort. And so I'm not into having people sign up for programs. I told one of my clients that I don't work in the ER. I would have sucked working in the ER, because I don't believe in quick fixes. I'm not going to patch you up and let you be on your way, give you some pills. No, I'm on the very high up floor there, because we are going to see a specialist now, and it's going to take work. So I don't offer any online courses or do-it-yourself stuff, because I work with people that are in this space of saying, I want to create the transformation. I'm ready to create the transformation instead of just coping. I want to value my relationship and value myself as much as I value my career, because the people I work with value their careers, because they attach their identity to that. And it's people that are committed and who create and understand that we can create intimacy in our relationships and within ourselves by looking at the solutions to those deep-rooted problems that we have. So I only offer long-term coaching with people. It does include a group coaching that we can do it for the purpose of community, but for any of that discussion around that, you can simply just DM me and we can have a conversation around it. Yeah, but for now, I'm not doing any 2 weeks, 2 months, 6 weeks.
I love it. I love it. Well, in the work that you do as well, like whether somebody is single or in a relationship, and I'm really hearing you work with leaders, and this work around being in integrity, being in your truth, inner resourcing and showing up from that place. So really outside of it just being about relationships, for anyone that is wanting to have this deeper inner transformation and ownership, I'll be sending them your way. So thank you so much, Londi. This has been
Thank you.
amazing. And yeah, excited for people to get to see more of your work.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. It is really, really wonderful. What
Of
an honor.
course. Yeah, it's my pleasure.